Evening. It's Monday, August 19th, 2013, and you are tuned in to Wide Awake News. My name's Gary Hendershot. I'll be your host for the evening. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Weather was very pleasant here. I hope it was nice where you are. Here in the Mid-Atlantic states, it was, open the windows and actually get some fresh air in the house. We didn't need our air conditioning. It was very pleasant for mid-August. Usually here in the Mid-Atlantic states, it's 100 degrees. It was actually some very pleasant sleeping weather, quite comfortable. Hope things were well for you as well. Well, let's get on with it. Do have a powerful glob of news articles I'm going to try to get through tonight and provide my commentary on. Last week it was one of the giggle items towards the end of the broadcast. I discussed how Rush Limbaugh and some of these neocon radio stars just aren't drawing the audience that they used to draw. Mainly because their neocon opinions have not found favor with the audience that they used to. And now I have to report that a venerable old publication, one that a lot of people used to trust, considered a good solid source of news, Time magazine. I remember a long time ago, I used to have a subscription to Time magazine. It has been a while. But seems a fellow by the name of Michael Grunwald, Grunwald. Now, I hope I said his name right. Michael Grunwald. Sent out a tweet. I tell you, sometimes this social media will get you in trouble. Sometimes you hit that send button before you have time to stop and think about it. But this fella is a senior correspondent with Time magazine. And here's how this article's from an outfit called StoryLeak.com. The article's circulating around a number of different places, but you can find a link to the source article I used at smartscarecrow.com. Just find the blog entry for August 19th, 2013. You'll find a link there where you can read this article in its entirety. But it starts out, less than 1 month after writing an article advocating the creation of a 1984-style police state within the United States, Time magazine's senior correspondent Michael Grunwald now says he can't wait to cheer on the death of Wikileaks' Julian Assange. In fact, he specifically can't wait to support a drone strike on Assange. Yeah, what do you think of that, huh? Now, this fella Assange gained notoriety as kind of the focal point of this do-gooder outfit that's billing itself as WikiLeaks. Now, I've heard all sorts of rumors. I've heard, WikiLeaks is a CIA front. It's this, that, the other thing. I don't know. I don't care. Fact is, some information that was of significant value to the American people, information that could help them put together a more complete picture of the activities being conducted by their government in your name, would only be known by WikiLeaks putting the information on the table. Assange is taking a lot of heat. You got to either love the guy or hate the guy. Personally, I have no opinion. But as long as our government is operating on our behalf, spending our money, we have a right to know what they're doing with it. And unfortunately, we can't seem to get that information directly from the horse's mouth. If not for investigative reporters digging up the dirt and getting it out there so that we can consider it and make up our own damn minds, we would only have the pap provided to us by the corporate-sponsored media, which at this point has become an arm of the government and is basically nothing more than a propaganda arm of the government. That's Joseph Goebbels would cheer on what they're doing. So this guy Grunwald would like to see Assange hit with a drone. He thinks it'd be a great idea. I wonder how Time Magazine's subscriptions have fared recently. Now, Wikileaks is not one to run and hide when threatened. In another article, this one out of Russia Today, it's hell when you got to go to the Russians to get real news. And don't get me wrong, Russia Today is their propaganda arm in many ways, but I have found that Russia Today as a source of international news seems to be a lot more, fair and balanced than anything I'm seeing on U.S. media. So even though, I have to use careful filters whenever I consider material coming out of Russia Today, by and large, I have found their reporting to be pretty good. I wish I could say the same for the media here in the United States. But anyway, it has been reported by Russia Today that WikiLeaks has released a trove of encrypted, in quotes, insurance data on Twitter and Facebook. The data can't be read without an encryption key, but the movement's supporters say that the encryption key could be published later in case anything happens to leading WikiLeaks figures. The names Assange and Snowden come up in the article. By the way, WikiLeaks did come to Snowden's aid in his negotiations for temporary asylum in Russia following the leaking of classified U.S. government data that revealed the specifics of NSA's global surveillance program. Now, most of us out here in the hinterlands that have actually been, paying attention and looking around, we're not surprised by any of the revelations that came out by Snowden. It was kind of neat to know, the buzzwords that the insiders called the stuff. We get to hear all their cute little acronyms and all that. But, we knew a long time ago. We knew back in the mid to late 90s that you could not send anything across the internet. You could not talk on your cell phone. You could not talk on your hardwired phone without somebody listening in. All Snowden did was kind of put a laser beam on it, give us some of the interesting details and specifics, but in reality, the only ones who did not know the material that Snowden put out there were the American people. All of our potential adversaries around the world were very well aware of that material. And I'm hearing the bumper music in the background, so I guess it's time for me to settle down for a minute and take a deep breath before we get into the rest of tonight's Wide Awake News. Enough time to discuss this this next topic with you. I think I've mentioned this particular item at least once before, possibly twice, but it bears repeating. This is an important issue, and as a lead-in to this topic, I'm going to take you down memory lane. I'm going to take you back in the Wayback Machine to 1992 and let you listen to what a little guy with big ears was saying back in the 1992 presidential election. So let me push the right buttons here and make sure I can get this both out on Rinse and on Justin TV so everybody can benefit from this slight history lesson. Okay, is the darn thing going to play? Come on, play, darn it. It's always something. All right, I'm running into technical difficulties here, so I'm going to go to plan B. All right, let's see here. Okay. That was the bit I was going to try to put on was Ross Perot, back during the 1992 elections, talked about this giant sucking sound that was going to be caused by NAFTA. That was the treaty of the day that both Bush Sr., that's George Bush the First, and Bill Clinton, both of them were on board with this NAFTA thing. And Ross Perot stood apart from the two major parties and said, no. Now, if you do that, there's going to be this giant sucking sound of jobs leaving the United States for Mexico and parts south and parts east. Well, that was fine and dandy back in 1992, and it's been proven that, Perot was pretty smart. He understood what was going on, and he was right. But, we decided to choose between the giant douche and turd sandwich that were offered to us in 92 instead of considering Ross Perot the alternative. And I guess we got what we deserved, assuming the election wasn't stolen by Diebold. We just really don't know. Well, now there's this new thing that's all being done behind the scenes. It's all hush-hush, quiet, secret. I mean, you would think the NSA was the one working on this thing. It's called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, this is a treaty being proposed between 12 nations of the world. They are the U.S., Japan, Australia, Peru, Malaysia, Vietnam, New Zealand, Chile, Singapore, Canada, Mexico, Brunei. The TPP contains a chapter on intellectual property covering copyright, trademarks, patents. Look, it's a big document. It's a big treaty. It's supposed to be one of these free trade agreements, very similar to NAFTA, but on a larger scale. And if you think the giant sucking sound associated with NAFTA was loud, this one's gonna even be louder. But, you say, how is it going to impact me? Well, just in the intellectual property arena alone, consider this. The TPP will ban parallel importation, so no more of those inexpensive generic Canadian drugs for you, Mr. American. Adopt criminal sanctions for copyright infringements. So no more slap on the hand and maybe a fine. Now you're going to be in a 6x9 with a fellow named Bubba who thinks you're pretty. The fact is that, despite its broad scope and far-reaching implications, this agreement is all being handled behind the scenes in very secret scenarios. The only reason we know about it is that some of the U.S. language of this treaty has been leaked. Did it come from WikiLeaks? I don't know, but it has been leaked, and people have been passing this thing around for some time. TPP raises significant concerns about citizens' freedom of expression, due process, innovation. You got one of those TiVo gizmos? You ever skip through the commercials of your recorded shows? Okay. Do you know that under TPP that's illegal? Yeah, those advertisers paid for those commercials. If you just fast forward through them, they're not getting their money's worth. That's a copyright infringement. That 6x9 with Bubba's got your name on it. The TPP will affect countries beyond the 11 that are currently involved. Bottom line, this Trans-Pacific Partnership seems to be a runaway freight train that's unstoppable. In many respects, it's far worse than NAFTA, but there are those who pull the strings who think it's a really, really, really good idea. So it just might be the law, unless you do something about it. Stand by, please. I hear that bumper music. We're going to have to take another break here, try and sell some products and keep the lights burning. We'll be back in just a moment. Second break of the evening. And, of course, while we were on that break, I tried to figure, okay, why couldn't I get the giant sucking sound to play? Now it'll play just fine now that I don't need it anymore. Couple more issues about this Trans-Pacific Partnership nonsense. Here's a couple of the things associated. Again, I'm focusing on the intellectual property aspects. There are many other aspects to this that we may cover in future broadcasts. Tonight, I'm focusing on this one specific piece of this treaty. It's going to place greater liability on Internet intermediaries. The TPP would force the adoption of the United States DMCA Internet Intermediaries Copyright Safe Harbor regime in its entirety. Bottom line is, okay, I've got a website, smartscarecrow.com. This presentation tonight, this is a commentary on news articles that I've become acquainted with over the last week or so. As part of my concern for the authors of these articles, every one of these articles that I'm commenting on tonight is credited on my website, including a link to the original. Credit goes to the authors who wrote these pieces. I am not the investigative reporter who turned this material up. I'm just a commentator, and I attempt to give credit where credit is due. If you'd like to read any of these articles in their entirety, you will find links at smartscarecrow.com. Just mosey over and find the blog entry for August 19th, and you can read these articles in their entirety. Make up your own damn mind. But, because I do that, I'm now considered an intermediary, and I could get in trouble. So it looks like I'm going to be damned if I do, damned if I don't. I kind of figure it's my responsibility to tell my readers where I got this material and point them to the original articles, give the author credit. I thought that was fair. I thought that's what you were supposed to do. But now all of a sudden, I become a republisher and guilty of copyright infringement. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to make it impossible for you as a consumer of the news to make up your own damn mind and publish your commentary on the coverage that was put out there. Something of a chilling effect, don't you think? Enough on that issue. We will probably talk about that Trans-Pacific Partnership nonsense again as it is a very relevant issue. I'll try to cover some of the other aspects of it in future broadcasts. Now on to another topic. How many of you out there got one of these smartphones? Well, I'll tell you, I fought it for the longest time. You know, my Motorola Razr was a fine phone, had good audio quality as a telephone. The darn thing worked great. I liked it. Well, you know, I got teased about my 1996 phone. And finally, I got cajoled into buying one of these fancy new things, so I'm now the proud owner of something called a Galaxy S4 by some Korean outfit. And I tell you, as a phone, it sucks. I've had to I now have to wear one of those darn Borg implants so I can hear the darn thing and so people can hear me because the audio quality on it sucks. But it's got all kinds of games and all kinds of neat stuff that I will probably never use. But that's okay. These phones are very, very popular. And thanks to these new smartphones and their built-in camera feature, we're getting a lot of reports from citizen journalists who just happen to be on the scene of something interesting going down. They got their smartphone in their pocket. They're familiar enough with it to get that thing deployed, get that camera going, and bring us first-hand video of stuff we never would have seen before such devices existed. So, my hat's off to the creator of these phones and to the citizen journalists who make use of them every day to show us what's really going on out there. But if you as the government, you might look at that and say, there'd just be a little bit too much informing going on. So yes, Apple has now patented a technology that will give your local police department or TSA or government agency or whatever remember Maxwell Smart? I'm giving away my age here, but remember the cone of silence? Yes, there is now a very effective technology that can disable the camera feature and various other smartphone features on Apple telephones in an area that can be controlled. So if a protest is going on and the police decide it's time to use some mace and some sticks and maybe some rubber bullets, and hey, you snipers up there, you be at the ready just in case we call on you. Oh, by the way, let's bring down the cone of silence, because if there is a citizen journalist out there, we don't want him getting the dirt on this. We want to be able to do our police state thing in complete privacy. We wouldn't want any of this to show up on YouTube tomorrow. So, let's just disable everybody's smartphone. Okay, what the moral of the story is, if you got that old Minolta 35 millimeter still, collecting dust in the closet, you might want to bring that bad boy out and dust it off, because you citizen journalists out there, be aware the technology does exist, may soon be deployed to make your smartphone about as dumb as my 1996 Razr with the flip of a switch. Apple already has a patent on the technology. Chances are others will follow suit in short order. The day of the citizen journalist armed with nothing more than their smartphone may very quickly be coming to an end. Think about it. And those of you who are dedicated citizen journalists, you might want to start thinking about a plan B. Well, let's see here. I may not have timed this one as good as I do usually. Coming up on a break in about 2 minutes here. Let me see if I can get through this next article, and we'll just see how it plays out. As part of my discussion on the TPP thing, that Trans-Pacific Partnership, I alluded to your TiVo, and how you might just decide you don't want to watch all those commercials. You might like just fast forward to commercials, and how that may become illegal. It is a copyright infringement not to sit through all the commercials that advertiser paid to have. Well, suppose your web browser was also considered a venue where advertisers had paid, and you went out and got something called an AdBlocker and employed an AdBlocker so that you could look at things without having to deal with all those advertisements. You might be guilty of a copyright infringement by looking at an unauthorized copy of a published work on the internet that has been filtered of its advertising client. There is a rumor going about that Mozilla, the publishers of the very popular Firefox browser, are now under a lot of pressure from advertisers to disable or no longer make available AdBlocker software, so that if you really don't want to see all those advertisements, okay, you can just filter them out, see the content, not deal with the ads. It's hard to say. Now, there have been conflicting rulings over the years. Now, in the case of the TiVo, there have been a couple of court rulings where it's been decided that, no, it's the consumer's choice. If they want to get up and go to the can or get a beer or turn down the volume or just, skip through the commercials, it's the consumer's choice. That same logic has been applied to ad blockers so far. This is an issue that's coming up, and yes, it is covered under this TPP rule that's coming down. Anyway, I can hear the bumper music in the background, so I'm going to have to back out of here while the network tries to sell some products to keep the lights burning. We'll be back with the final segment of tonight's Wide Awake News in just a few moments. I've got 11 minutes, and I've got a couple of more articles I wanted to cover. And tonight, instead of my gag portion for the lead out, I was going to try to get in some movie reviews. So let's see how much of this I can get through, and maybe I'll have enough time at the end of tonight's program to do my movie reviews. We'll just have to see. Whenever you think of politicians, okay, you think, sleaze, I mean, come on. I mean, about can you think of anybody held in lower regard than politicians? I think in most nationwide polls, even vacuum cleaner salesmen and used car salesmen come in a little higher in terms of, people you trust than politicians. Well, we had an incident where a governor in New York, a guy named Spitzer, got disgraced out of office back in 2008 because of his dalliance with high-priced hookers. Well, if it'd been D.C., and Marion Barry, I mean, hookers and blow, I mean, that was just perks of the office, he said. So, but this guy Spitzer, he actually resigned because, he got outed with some high-priced hookers. Well, 5 years later, Spitzer's set to take some of that local regulatory power back. See, this guy Spitzer, for all of his downside, and let's face it is kind of embarrassing to get caught, with a $5 hooker, let alone a $500 hooker. But this guy was actually doing some good things. All right. Now, he's not exactly my idea of a perfect politician, but when it came to one of the all-important items on my agenda, which is getting these banksters to take responsibility for some of their transgressions, this guy Spitzer was on the right track. He's, a little liberal from my perspective, but, and so, anytime you look at a politician, you got to take the bad with the good, okay? And on that one area, regulating the banksters, this guy Spitzer was doing a pretty damn good job, okay? The banksters were afraid of him. And chances are the NSA had a whole bunch of, Isn't it fun? Now, it's just an unrelated coincidence. Can't be anything to that. I mean, that has got to be just, conjecture and rumor. I mean, the fact that this guy was an enemy of my enemy, and the NSA seems to be spying on everything everybody does, and all of a sudden, as soon as this guy comes out, talking about how he's going to get hard on the banks, all of a sudden he gets caught up in hooker. It's got to just be a totally unrelated coincidence, that Hookergate thing. It's just totally unrelated to his stand on the banksters. But I would encourage you to take a look at an article by Ellen Brown. Ellen Brown, pictured on the left here next to Eliot Spitzer, pictured on the right. Ellen Brown has been a guest on Wide Awake News on many occasions. She puts forward the idea of a public banking system. Basically, I don't want to put words in her mouth. You should really go to webofdebt.com and read how she explains it. But, my take on it is she is in favor of nationalizing the central bank in the United States, which is known as the Federal Reserve. This is a private banking entity that's owned by basically a handful of very powerful, very influential banking families here in the United States. And frankly, they are the puppeteer of our politicians. They are the ones who pull the strings. They are the ones who own you. They are the ones who own the money. They own almost all the important land in the United States. They basically own everything. You are their slaves. Now, whether you buy into all the arguments that Ellen Brown puts on the table, whether you like this guy Eliot Spitzer or not, is irrelevant. There is a very compelling argument put forward by Miss Brown in her article that has been published at an outfit called Global Research. And yes, if you go to webofdebt.com, Ellen Brown's website, or if you mosey over to smartscarecrow.com and look for the blog entry for August 19th, 2013, you will find links to this article, and I encourage you to read it in its entirety, particularly if you live in New York and might like to vote during the upcoming election for comptroller. That is the position that Mr. Spitzer seeks in this next election. Might be interesting to see what Ellen Brown has to say about this fella. Now, once again, I'm going to take a chance here and try to play one of these short videos, and I'm going to try and do it in such a way so that the folks on Rents and the folks on Justin TV can both enjoy it. But I want you to hear what George Carlin, one of my favorite philosophers and comedians, had to say about this issue. Let's see now. Cross your fingers. Let's hope it comes.
But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The big, the wealthy, the real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media news, all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. You know something? They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table to figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long, where they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah.
You know, I probably should have given my adult language warning before we moved into that segment, but that was the one and only George Carlin, absolutely prescient in his understanding of where we are today. As with all things, consider, make up your own damned mind. Now, usually I try to wrap these programs with a giggle, you know, because, I mean, let's face it, you know, this show has been a total doggy downer, okay? I mean, I've just, all these horrible things I've put out there, oh, it's just awful. And I like to end the broadcast with something a little upbeat, something to send you out of here with a little bit of a smile on your face, you know, a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. Well, tonight I couldn't find anything that I thought was really a giggle. You know, all the news was depressing. So I decided, you know, I've seen a number of movies recently that were in the news. It's time to go down them, and you know, I've only got about a minute left here, so I'm going to have to go through them real quick. First of all, Superman. If you get a chance to see it, if you get a chance to rent it, if you get a chance to do it pay-per-view, do it. It's a guy flick. The chicks are going to, definitely a guy flick. Lots of explosions, lots of car chases, lots of action. Elysium. Alex Jones pans this thing. He sees all kinds of New World Order messages, all kinds of racial this and racial that. The white guys are terrible and the brown people and the black people are perfect. You know, as far as I'm concerned, that's all crap. The movie sucked. Okay? It was boring. Hey, stay tuned for Jeff Rance. He's coming up right after this next commercial break. And you betcha, I'll see you next Monday. Good night, all.